Thank you all for coming. My name is Daryl Johnson with Mid-States Minority Supplier Development Council. I actually am the program director for our Accelerate 100 Plus program, a diverse-owned business accelerator with currently 154 companies looking to scale and grow their businesses. I thank you for coming to our panel, distinguished panel today on artificial intelligence. Team, I was actually on my Instagram just moments ago, and you'll be excited to hear that there's an organization called Smith AI. How many people like selling? Like you just love to sell? Look at all those hands. This gentleman back here, he's in consulting, probably sales, so you hit him up after this and you don't have no more problems. But apparently Smith AI is calling all small business owners and leaders. Check out our free on-demand webinar where we'll address the most critical ways to skyrocket your business revenues, profit margins, yield more sales from marketing campaigns, and efficiently work through all your leads without increasing ad spend or hiring staff, just leveraging AI.
Smith AI.
Yeah, Smith AI. No more salespeople. They got it nailed. So I don't really know what AI is because every time I read about AI, it's in the vacuum cleaner, it's in the washing machine, it's in my phone. I hope by the end of this, we at least demystify to a certain degree what AI isn't. And Ken Beache, who is with Metric Environmental, is going to be our moderator today. Metric Environmental is a consulting services company in Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. They have licensed staff in the engineering, geology, hazardous materials, lead accredited professionals, ENV sustainability professionals, licensed asbestos inspectors and project designers. You guys do it all in environmental. If you guys would please give a warm welcome for your moderator today, Kenneth Beache.
Hello. Am I live? I'm coming up. Good morning, Daryl. Thank you for the introduction. The check's in the mail, as I told you earlier on. So thanks, everyone, for coming this morning. In the invitation, in today's market, they were talking about the fact that there are so many software solutions out there that do it all for you. You don't need an in-house IT team or deep tech skills to realize the productivity boosts and cost savings of AI. Existing tools and low-code platforms make tapping into the power of AI an achievable goal for businesses of any size and expertise. And this morning, we're going to discuss the ways small businesses are leveraging the power of AI. We're happy to have a diverse panel today with significant personal interest in the field. Our panel represents academia, AI software development, and AI consulting. So please allow me to introduce our panelists today. To my immediate left is Bob Logan. He's president of Mobile Tracker, an AI-based facial recognition software solution developer. To his left is Karthik Ramani, Dr. Karthik Ramani of Purdue, Boiler Up, who's the Donald W. Feddersen Distinguished Professor of Mechanical Engineering. To his left is Dr. Scott Michael, Research Applications Team Lead at Indiana University, the other school. And to the far left is, last but not least, Aubrey Annan, founder and principal of Annan and Associates, and he is a former director of PwC's digital strategy, and he's a technology consultant. So please join me in welcoming our panel this morning. Thank you. I'd also like to introduce the panel to an audience. In the room today, you have business leaders and owners from across the Mid-States Council service area of Indiana, Southern Illinois, and Southeast Missouri. These business leaders represent a breadth of businesses ranging in size from less than $1 million to $50 million in revenue. This morning, we have about 85 minutes to better understand the topic of artificial intelligence. Some of the questions today will be going to the group to hear different perspectives. Some of the questions will be going to individuals within the group because of the nature of what they do. And some of the questions are going to come to you because this is a participation, and we hope to get the most out of it. When providing a question for the audience, I ask that you please clearly give your name, the business you're representing today, and then proceed with your question. Can we do that? Okay, I've got a lot of nods. Good. So as the French would say, allons-y, let's get into it. So an admonition to the panel. AI is not what we do. Very few of us may be engineers or technology experts. So watch out for the acronym landscape and the landmines. And remember who this audience is. We're business owners who want to better understand the technology and the expertise that you can bring to us today. So this first one is to the panel in general. What exactly in your mind is artificial intelligence? How do you define artificial intelligence? And I'll take it from anyone in the panel.
I'll start.
Please do.
So Bob Logan with Mobile Tracker. Thanks everybody for joining. So from our perspective, artificial intelligence is simply software telling a machine or a device what to do. And so when you look at the landscape of what's available out there in the marketplace, different things, manufacturing, healthcare, schools, all these different segments are trying to figure out how do we build, how do we do, how do we, lessen the risk. All those things now become part of what we've got to do. And so from our perspective as a software company, we build it from MVP to scale, and it depends on your particular environment. But it's simply put, and my panel, my associates here will probably get more in depth, but from our perspective, it's simply software telling a device or a machine what to do.
Now, would anyone else on the panel differ or like to add an adjustment? Karthik.
Yeah,
No.
thanks. So you want to go?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So how many of you have used Google here? Right, of course. The PageRank. Bought stuff from Amazon?
See?
Recommendation engine, right? AI. Netflix? Not Blockbuster anymore. They got rid of Blockbuster, right? Of course, you might be using a lot of high-performance computers, played games. NVIDIA, all the GPUs. All that is AI. So AI is not new. It's been around. It's influenced all your clicks. It's changed your mind. If you have kids in Facebook, a lot of AI at play there too. So AI has been around. There's old AI. In fact, one of our lab's early students is the head of AI at Walmart. She's using the AI we taught her 18, 19 years ago, different kind of AI. But there's new AI. New AI started exactly in 2012. In fact, one of our colleagues, Jan LeCun and Jeff Hinton from Toronto and NYU, were playing around with images. In fact, I worked with Jan LeCun in 2008. 2012, they created very deep neural networks. It was a big shift in AI that we are seeing at play today, that we are all afraid of, or maybe we want to be friends with it. That AI demonstrated that very deep neural networks with very, very high compute power and their representations could do a lot of image analysis and image search at scale at very high precision. People were competing on that over the years, but they showed that it can far surpass humans' capabilities. That's the new AI, and it's taken on different shapes and forms, and it's changing how we think, how we play, what we do, and so on. But also, it's very narrow form of AI. So I don't think, in many respects, it's something that we have to be afraid of. I don't like the word AI, by the way. I prefer to think of it as IA, intelligence augmentation, helping humans, helping us do better, and so on. So I'll come back to it. I think this is a short beginning. I can take over later.
Aubrey?
Yeah, I think just very much as Karthik said, he gave you like some very practical examples, but the way I talk about, the way I talk about AI is just a broad set of technologies that enable machines to think, learn, sense, and then act, right? So you see that broadly in commercial applications today, like Karthik mentioned, recommendations when you're making Amazon purchases, right? Very simple things like Alexa, right? Taking your speech, right? And then making decisions for you. But in terms of business application, right, where you see a lot of AI being used is limiting the amount of white space that it takes for you to make a decision, right, with the use of technology, right? So I think you think about it where most businesses are using different forms of AI, it's helping them make decisions quickly, right? And how do you make decisions is basically you have a lot of data which becomes information, which you turn it into insight, right? So, and as data grows, the amount of time that requires for you to do that is astronomical. So how do you use machines, right, to help you get to insights faster, right? So from a business application, I think one of the primary uses of AI is to helping humans make decisions faster.
Yeah, and I would just add that, I think the term AI has definitely been something that's evolving over time. So as Karthik pointed out, back in the early 2010s, it really was a specific set of technologies that referred to things that did things like image classification with deep neural networks. And as the sort of buzzword panache of AI has grown, more and more things have sort of come under that AI umbrella. So today, things that may not have been considered AI 5 or 10 years ago are like business automation or simple just connecting systems together in an intelligent way is now labeled AI. So I think it's really important to be very specific about the types of technologies that you're dealing with and that you're interested in, and know what sort of the potential and limitations of those, because AI is such an umbrella term at this point. It can mean so many different things to different people.
Understood. So based upon that and the definitions you guys provided, what important role can you see it having on how might it help to reduce costs and mitigate risks for some of our businesses? Cost reduction and risk mitigation. Can you think of some examples?
I can go again. Sorry to hog the show. So from our perspective, we've got a couple platforms when you talk about cost reduction and mitigating risk. So when you look at entering in a building, all of you probably have seen the temperature scanners when you walk in a building. So what it does, you go up to the scanner, it takes a facial picture of you. It'll also take your temperature, and it'll take the time and date. Okay, so some very basic analytical points. But what that does, it sets the stage for two things. One, if you have an FTE at the front that is doing the infamous click, that's now become part of a cost for you. Now the risk mitigation is that same person that's taking that click now becomes part of that environment. So if someone comes in with a temperature or something like that, now immediately you've got two things. A, cost of them potentially doing a click, or B, them being off with a potential risk. Not only will that device do those analytics, but when you think of a term in the software world, it's called an API. Stands for Application Program Interface. So with this device, it also will allow you to do other things potentially in your environment that could reduce your costs. So from a clock in and clock out standpoint that I just mentioned, you now have the ability to send this data directly to your accounting system. Right? Now all of this is a cost, but the point is using an intelligent machine versus an FTE, not that we're trying to get rid of people, we're just trying to enhance essentially a lobby, right? And or an entry point in the building. But all those things now become part of a way to mitigate risk, reduce your cost, so that you have now flexibility to be able to, in our world, to be able to do things with a machine that will allow you to, obviously take care of things. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that that's the first platform from our perspective. The second one is a GPS fleet system that we've got. And so what this does, it's a device that plugs in a car and or a bus or any kind of major vehicle. When you're looking at analytics from where the car is going, how fast it's driving, harsh braking, harsh turning, none of us want to even understand any of that, because the reality is we don't drive fast, do we? No, we drive the speed limit. But when you're looking at over-the-road truck drivers or dump trucks, their mission is to get to a critical location pretty fast, right? And so all those data points become part of analytics that can help you, again, reduce your costs and to reduce all the other things that come involved with it. Last point, looking in that same vehicle, you've got two other components. One is electronic log delivery, which is if you cross state lines, the federal government now says, I need to know from an electronic standpoint where you've been, if you've pulled over, if you've had sleep, et cetera. And then the final one, through an AI camera, you have the ability to look in the vehicle and look out of the vehicle. Well, insurance companies are really liking this particular feature because now what happens is truck drivers are doing 60, 70 miles an hour on the road, maybe a little faster, but they can't stop, and it depends on the load. So if they're hauling some really heavy things, they just can't stop. But some of these folks think they can come from the different direction, go in front of the truck, and beat the truck to its location. And some are successful, but some are not. And the real reality around it is now you have insurance companies and companies now having attorneys on phones because it's your word against mine, right? And so with the artificial intelligence camera, video won't lie. So video is going to now be able to be captured in the vehicle. So if the driver is on their phone and they look up and all of a sudden they hit someone, well, that's the driver's fault. But if the driver is simply just doing his thing or her thing and they're driving, the camera's looking at the driver and they're not doing anything but driving, and someone comes in front of them and they hit them, the video now sends it to wherever you want it to go, from your risk manager to your manager to the insurance company. But that video now is critical and crucial because when you look at the cost of what someone's going to sue you for, they're going to probably roll out of the vehicle, their back is hurting, and I'm not saying that someone won't get hurt, because if you get hit by a truck, I'm sure, a car, it's going to hurt. But when you look at, what's going on in our world, everyone wants to kind of get you, so to speak, right? And so these particular technologies begin to support us from a cost reduction, from a risk mitigation perspective, and that's the platforms that we deliver, and it's been very helpful for our customers. So,
thank you for that. So Karthik,
Sure.
in the academia, I'm assuming that you're still involved in research?
Absolutely.
Okay. But I know that Dr. Scott is not. So in your area, where have you found some of the other avenues for cost or risk mitigation that AI has become commonplace?
Yeah, I'll sort of try to give you a little bit of a context. Yeah, I'm in academia and mechanical and computer engineering, but I also have started businesses which used AI in the past, and was also at the National Science Foundation in the Small Business Innovation Research Board, which invested about $300 million in startups throughout the US, and that funding is increasing. So we have funded, part of the team that funded a lot of programs, started entrepreneurship programs, and so on and so forth. So that said, my context is not just academic. I do understand business, been in it, and also worked in industry before. So, so the point I wanted to make was, how many of you have been in the old elevators when they used to have an operator? Okay, thank you. Yeah. So there was a while that you didn't trust the automated buttons. We wanted the elevator operator there, right? So I did the analysis of all types of jobs. More than 400 economists have done that. And what they found was, perhaps that's the only kind of a job that was completely gone, but it has shifted to other businesses. So being a friend of AI in some ways is very critical, because it's going to change the nature of jobs. It's going to shift the ones that might gain from it. And you can think about companies like Xerox and several others that failed to see the next change in technology that was coming, and they lost ground, to the things that we put in the pocket, for instance, now, right? And this is gobbling away a lot of businesses, actually. If you think of the phone, it's not just a phone. It can do a lot of things that Bob is talking about, right? Computer vision-based AI in driverless cars and so on. And by the way, driverless cars are not happening, right? You might ask why. So given that context, I wanted to talk a little bit about creating opportunities using AI as your friend. And of course, lowering costs comes. Increasing sales is more like outreach. It doesn't do anything internally. Internally, it does, anything that happens routinely, and the big data was spoken about by many others. That's one of the big drivers of growth. And I want to sort of paraphrase and bring into the most recent magazine from the Association of Computing Machinery. It's the front runner of computer science. This one talks about trustworthy AI, okay? And this is, of course, headlines is there's no AI without data. These are the last 3 issues. And then this talks about a little bit more advanced stuff. The future is big graphs for AI. So the points that I'm trying to bring out here is that if there's anything routine with data and you're able to automate, right, it does take that job off of that person, but that person will be starting to do higher level stuff, better decision making perhaps for the business and so on and so forth, and spend less time on it so the business can use that expertise or upgrade them. So there is a danger that we need very rapid upskilling of people that are doing fairly routine stuff that AI can take. So upskilling becomes critical. In fact, Amazon has announced business programs to train people that they know that AI is going to take away, to upskill them so that they can do more things which are more flexible. If your company is into doing non-routine stuff, producing a lot of different parts, et cetera, rather than doing the same thing again and again and again, then and making judgments and bringing intuition that humans can bring that AI perhaps can't, and you are not going to trust the AI to do it today, right? You'll still need your manager to come and say, oh, well, that's good or not good. So all those types of opportunities are going to exist for business. So making AI your friend is very critical, and also trying to get your business into positions that is not doing routine stuff that can possibly be done with automating judgments from big data alone. Those are the kinds of areas that I would ask you to start looking into carefully and positioning yourself to not get into it. But that said, I do want to, in the voice recognition and many other areas that we talked about, AI is becoming really powerful, but not yet understanding. How many of you have heard of OpenAI here? No one, right? Mm-hmm. So 2015, Elon Musk and a bunch of others, very wealthy people, funded OpenAI. It's completely open. They don't have any business interests at all, right? And OpenAI created something called GPT-3. Anybody heard about it yet? You have. So GPT-3 is going to be the next version of the Siri and also the Alexa and everything. So what it can do, quite surprisingly, it can actually answer very open-ended, complex questions, okay, perfectly well with compound sentences that you will not make a difference between it and a human. So in these areas, AI is going to scream and do extremely well, right? So if you are in the telephone operator business answering routine questions and so on and so forth, it's something that you got to watch for. That said, once it gets into more non-routine stuff where human judgment is needed and so on, use AI, take away your automated work, and start doing other things better than what AI could probably do with big data.
Do you want to go now? Scott,
yeah. So
Aubrey, you can go.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, I think, again, looking at the spectrum of different types of AI technologies, and if you focus at sort of the more well understood and well defined end of automation of processes, there's some great gains to be had. I think this question is focusing on mitigating risk and lowering costs. At the more sort of future-looking end of AI or advanced end of AI, I think that we open up new opportunities as opposed to sort of reducing risk or lowering costs. I think that for those more routine things, there are a great number of opportunities. The great thing about automating something is that a machine always does exactly what you ask it to do. Also, the great shortcoming of automating things is that the machine always does exactly what you ask it to do. Yes. So, you get things like reliability, you get the ability to audit much more easily. But as you want to do more and more complex tasks, that can become more challenging to implement. And then as the complexity increases, so does the level of skill that's required to operate such a thing, and the level of auditing and gathering of data to make it perform well. So I think really looking at you always have to know what your risk tolerance is whenever you try to use one of these new techniques. So is 99% accuracy good enough? In something like a deep neural network, that's a phenomenal metric for accuracy. That's probably not what you want to have your automated surgical device operating at. So it really is highly dependent upon what your tolerance is. A lot of times when you're trying to engage in a new opportunity, you have more risk tolerance because there's only upside. So for example, at IU, we're looking at student success and how better to encourage students to take advantage of all of the help that they can get in courses, and how to identify early on when people need help and what the appropriate way to nudge them is. So if that AI technique has an incorrect recommendation, there is some risk of downside that the student doesn't get what they need. But compared to what's happening now, which is nothing, it looks almost entirely like positive benefit. So really understanding what you're hoping to achieve with the technique and the limitations of it is very important in my mind.
So I want to throw one to the audience, and I'm going to slide across to Aubrey next. It was mentioned a few minutes ago that as time progresses, there are some routine and mundane tasks being done in our businesses that are probably going to go away. How many in the room could think of some, when he said that, who picked up on, we may want to think about that? Was anybody here who thought, well, there's some things that we perform that, ultimately, it may make a change in our business? Show of hands, anyone?
Ken, if I may,
Certainly.
I just want to modify that a little bit. So you might be doing a job, but the job would consist of different tasks. So when you look at AI, you have to look at task-specific automation, which means that jobs change title, okay? But really what AI is after is those specific tasks which are routine. So if you have workflows where certain tasks are routine, AI is perfect for those. So it may not take the whole job out, it'll transform the job into something else, okay? So think of it in that way, not in terms of job titles, but in terms of those tasks that are routine that you think AI could do. In fact, I would like to hear what those types of tasks might be.
Because obviously in the area of research, knowing those tasks is critically important to their thinking about how they advance those. Does anyone have one that may come to mind from the audience?
Did you hear me introduce myself?
Yes.
Okay. We have plants, and so we do, actually with COVID, it helps with the automation and using AI in our systems with certainly robots, and then using technology. That's gotten rid of a lot of jobs as far as safety and then routine jobs. So that's one area. And then interestingly, I love this area, but with law. So I also practice law, and interestingly, I've seen a lot of stories where they're trying to replace lawyers and judges because the idea is that using artificial intelligence will help to make things less biased and more efficient, which I don't agree with at this stage. I certainly think there's bias in other things, but I'm not ready to replace lawyers and judges yet. So I see different areas where it certainly can impact industries.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I totally agree. Brandon, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm Brandon Gasson, Supplier Diversity Administrator out at Purdue University. And I'm relatively kind of new to this field, so I feel like I kind of bring maybe a little fresh eyes to the issue. But so part of the job with the supplier diversity is basically taking aggregate information and spend data from several different departments at the university. Well, we have people kind of working in the background on spreadsheets and pulling, the coding doesn't match, or this particular, they ran out of money in this budget, so now they're pulling money from this budget, and this has to be manually data. So I can see AI, some type of AI applications that can kind of simplify this, and that person who's working all those spreadsheets and things, they can utilize this time for, more outreach, more engagement with these firms, as opposed to laborious time putting together, data for spend.
Karthik, that's right in your backyard.
Yeah, of course. I do want to respond to, was it Selena from?
Helena.
Okay, do you want me to?
No, yes, by all means.
Yeah, so I started in robotics in 1985, and we went through the same, at the time people were saying it's going to get rid of jobs. There are a lot of jobs that are needed to fix the robots, create the software, create the automation lines in Cummins and so on. So even though those humanly tasks there are automated, it's creating jobs elsewhere. Yeah. Similar to what happened in Netflix, the software programmers and others got the job of Blockbuster, right? And similar to what Amazon is killing all the local malls and so on. So that said, I do want to make a comment. Most of the commercially very successful robots today don't have arms. They just, like what Amazon uses, moving shelves and the Roomba and so on. The robots that are being used in Cummins, the armed robots, they've been around for a long time. They've become cheaper, and the computer vision has gotten better, and it's more affordable. In fact, the country that uses the maximum number of robots per capita is actually Korea. US uptake is somewhat slower, but they are definitely shifting jobs away. So I do agree with that. But the biggest problem with robots, the general purpose robot, is this, the hands. In fact, in a recent MIT report made out to the US government, the biggest shortcoming of robots has been identified to be one of the biggest shortcomings is the gripper. It just is not able to do the things that we do with the hands. Otherwise, Amazon would have got rid of all the 100,000 or 80,000 workers. They're not able to. It's just moving the shelves around, right? So, but yet people are trying to make the dexterity and other things that we do with the human hands to happen in robotics. It's still further away. I don't think it's going to happen shortly, but it's been a big challenge for robotics over all these years. So that said, and of course, Cummins is an automation, mass production company. So if you're in a business where you're producing products which are changing rapidly, the same robots will not be, you can't justify them for doing the things that we as humans do much better. Is changing workflows and changing products and changing things. Yeah. So
thank you for that.
Thank you.
So Aubrey, to you, because you are on the consulting side of the spectrum, when speaking to businesses and industry, what are some of the assumptions, right or wrong, made by those businesses about AI?
Yeah, I think that's very good question. I think a couple of things. I think when, if the last 2 years has taught us anything, that no business is immune to disruption, right? Small or large. And what a lot of organizations have done in the last 2 years, you hear this term called digital transformation, right? And when you say digital transformation, there are a whole host of answers that you get, right? Some executives will say, well, it's all about technology. Some people will say it's all about experience. Some people will say it's all about the customer engagement. And loop into that, now there's very heavy focus on technology, right? So cloud, AI, especially data and analytics. All of those things are lumped in together, right? So number one thing that is very challenging for organizations to understand is, hey, when we speak about disruption, right? What does it mean for us? When we speak about transformation, what does it mean for us? And we talk about using, these enabling technologies. What does it mean for us? So one is just helping organizations kind of speak the same language so they know where they're going. And traditionally, that has been the challenge, right? Not really understanding, where we're trying to go with our evolution, our North Star, so to speak. So that's one. I think when it comes to AI specifically, right, I think we've heard a whole list of different things around data, analytics, automation, workflows. And I think one of the biggest things that organizations are not really clear around when it comes to AI is, what are we using it for, right? Are we using it to enable automation? Are we using it to make decisions? And if we're using it to make decisions, do we trust, right, the models that are behind making those recommendations? That's one of the biggest things, right? I think in a recent survey that I saw in one of there's a few organizations now that are coming up around, they call it responsible AI, but making sure to elevate the decision framework that is behind AI that's making recommendations. Right, so one of the things that organizations are somewhat skeptical about, especially business leaders, is if I'm about to make, $100 million decision that a machine is telling me to make, do I feel comfortable making that decision, right? Or if a machine is telling me to make a decision around the safety of my patients, right? Am I comfortable making that decision without knowing what went into that recommendation, right? So if there's one thing that I'll say is, one, organizations really understanding the outcomes or things that they're trying to use artificial intelligence for, and then really elevating the framework or the models that's behind the machines that are making the recommendations. So I think those are two big barriers, right, that I see.
So how much, just a follow-up, how much of that you think might be ignorance, and how of it might be misguided frame of reference?
I wouldn't call it ignorance. I think it's just a learning curve, right? And I think Karthik talked about upskilling. I think as business leaders, there's now a shift from just being able to know and talk about the subject and really understanding it, right? So if you're leaving it up to the rest of your organization, right, I think you may be doing yourself a disservice, right? I think part of it is just upskilling and understanding, right? When you talk about, there's a whole list of things that go under machine learning, artificial intelligence. You heard neural networks, you had machine learning. There are so many other things, right? And there are tools out there that would help you just get a basic understanding of these things, right? So I think part of it is just the learning curve and some of the leaders trying to get in and understand when we talk about artificial intelligence, what is it and how can I use it to kind of get to the business outcomes my organization needs, right? So I don't think it's so much ignorance. I think it's just the leaders getting up a knowledge curve and upskilling themselves, right, to really understand, right, some of these technologies.
Scott, you look like you have a...
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what you said because, the idea of responsible AI is very, very important. And I think a sort of a related idea is something called explainable AI, where looking at the different types of techniques and algorithms that might be used, some of them are much more transparent. So if you want to say, why did this outcome happen? Why did a recommender system make this recommendation? And understand if you, at the end of that workflow, can see that there's bias or that there's errors and want to try and go back and understand, what's happening. There are, certain techniques that are much more easy to understand where that error can be coming in. as opposed to something that's much more opaque and is a black box. So the black box solutions, you can always, spend a lot of time trying to dig in and understand where decisions are coming from, but sometimes it's just, impossible. Some of these very complex neural network solutions that have been developed by companies like NVIDIA, they don't understand, where the answers are coming from, with teams and teams of PhD scientists developing these models. And so that's really, I think, key, knowing going in, do I want to be able to explain these answers? What level of transparency do I require from the solution?
Please do.
If you may. Yeah, so piggybacking on both your comments, it was very appropriate, the idea of trust and explainability. I'll just give you a very naive, simple example. I was just trying to come up with something. If I asked you what is 600 divided by 44, right? You're going to pull your calculator and try it out if it's not intuitive. But at the end of the day, you have to look at it as a human and say, does it make sense? Maybe you miskeyed it, or maybe something else went wrong, right? Is it really is that the problem that I'm trying to solve, right? So in general, as humans, we do have to understand what's going on behind it. But yet, you're still Google this, do you trust it? Well, it's not going to kill you, or it's not a $100,000 decision, so you just go with it, right? Assuming that what Google is telling you is true. So one of the biggest questions now is that the companies are facing with, and they are under pressure, because people are losing trust in the AI systems that Facebook and we saw the elections, right? I don't have to tell you anything more. So all these systems that have been using AI and the wealth the bigger unicorns have accumulated, they are under pressure to I don't know how to put it, to make the wealth spread a little bit more, but also how does the AI have to pose itself to the people in order for you to, not just trust it, because certainly they've become really good at making us click away. Mm-hmm. We sign off everything and we click away. Everybody does it, right? Mm-hmm. You don't even read the agreement, right? But yet these large companies are making money out of us. Google wouldn't exist without the users. You're using Waze. I came here using a map. Waze wouldn't exist and tell you there's an accident and there's a cop without you telling where the cop is. So it's sort of leveraging the collective wisdom. They're making money, but they're giving us benefits. We're using it, but we still give away a lot, right? Yeah. So that said, trust and explainability and that area is going to go through a big change, that companies will be forced to change their user interfaces and the way that they interact with you and become more open. So the meaning of trust itself has to come out. It's not out yet, but it's going to take maybe maybe next 5-10 years. It's going to be a big issue.
Well, trust, I believe, is already an issue.
In terms of the companies being responsible.
Yes,
I mean.
It is definitely coming into that space. So I want to throw something out there, and this is actually within the reason of what you can say. In what ways do you know that your representative universities, Purdue and IU, are employing artificial intelligence currently in its operations? In what ways can you speak of?
Well, so at IU, the teams that I run look towards sort of cutting edge future research. So we support a lot of different research initiatives in people using AI. So things like genomics and things like computer vision and stuff like that, looking to the future. In the actual operations, we also field all the questions from the operations of the university as to how can we use AI to improve university operations. So my teams have done, at this point, probably a dozen or so of these projects, from how do we build a chatbot to answer all of our IT questions. So at the university, there's a very nicely curated knowledge base where people can look up articles for how to do, all sorts of things. And still, we have a service desk that gets lots of tickets, which the answer is, please read this knowledge base article. Why didn't you look this up to start with? And so, can we have a chatbot that just answers people's questions in an automated fashion? And so it turns out that, sure, you can have a chatbot. They're they take a lot of time to train. You need to have your data in a particular format. So my team sort of advised the service owners as to how to go about this. And they ended up purchasing a vended solution. And I think to come back to sort of the trustworthiness, not only as users are your data, are you the product, and are your data being harvested, but also if you purchase a vended solution, many times part of the agreement is that your experience or that your data will be collected into that company's sort of total collective intelligence. So you're providing potentially the vendor a service in addition to paying for the solution. And so at the end, we now have a chatbot that will answer your questions and does an okay job. I'm sure everyone's tried to get help from Verizon or Xfinity or whatever and might have asked the chatbot a question, and it's never as good as a human, at least in my personal experience. So.
They are getting better. I think the key is how the owners have chosen to tell the chatbot, you need to elevate this to a real person right now because the person's getting aggravated, either in their tone of voice or something. But I have noticed, I don't know if you've noticed that those chatbots have started to improve in terms of handing you off to a real person when they realize they're not getting it. So I would say, coming around that same conversation, Karthik, can you say anything more?
Yeah, so I have a colleague in Georgia Tech. He actually teaches a computer science class, and I'll come to the end of the story very quickly here. So students take his class on AI, and after the class, he told them that 60 to 70% of the questions, Watson, who answered all their questions, was not a human. It was IBM's engine that he employed. So it took care of that 70%, and the TAs did the oddball, right? So the standard, every time kind of coming question. But that said, universities are great at creating innovative things, and startups, and including Google came out of Stanford undergrad projects funded by the National Science Foundation and so on. But we ourselves are not very innovative in adopting new technologies. So, it's like this, any business, big ship going forward, right? We didn't create Coursera, we didn't create edX, we didn't create all those courses in LinkedIn. We use them, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of shift in the way that universities are reaching out to businesses and students and so on. By combining both the humanly presence and capabilities and the online potential that we now have. So that is going through a change in our business models. But in terms of adopting, we use Google. So I think universities are not that innovative internally, but we create people that go out and create innovations.
I was on campus a few days ago and observed those little delivery bots all over campus. For those who don't know, at Purdue, and I'm sure other universities have them also, they have these little bots. They're probably about 24 by 18 in size, 6 wheels, and the little flag, and they run campus. And I think they're mostly doing deliveries. But they're interacting with students and bicycles and stopping and thinking. And I saw one going down the road, and then it stopped, and it turned around and went in the other direction, almost as if it had found its way down a dead-end path, or realized, wait a minute, I'm not taking the shortest route to point B. And so it's occurring, and they're using it. So we're seeing it real time. Go on.
Short comment. there are a lot of people behind them too.
that?
It's not all automated in AI. There are people behind running
Behind the
those
scene
bots
running
too.
those bots?
Yeah.
Okay. You have to
In
start
fact,
somewhere.
those jobs are easier to shift because they could be run from China or India
Yes.
for you may through the internet. So, but in any case, but they do have some level of computer vision and AI.
Right. So for the group in general, can you think of an application or something that you personally have either worked on from a research perspective or employed that has gave you great personal satisfaction because it helped resolve an issue for someone? Aubrey, you want to start on your end?
Sorry, something personal that I've
Something that
employed?
you have employed on behalf of someone else or some type of organization that made a difference that
Got
you
it,
could
okay.
really become, that you felt personally satisfied by.
Yeah. Yeah, so just a very practical example. I have a client in pharmaceutical industry. Average time to discover a drug and get it to market is industry average about 12 years. Actually, the last 2 years shows that it can be done very quickly. So, but a lot of the white space in that 12 years is really about waiting for data to make decisions. Plus, also dealing with the regulators and a lot of the labor intensiveness of processing a lot of information. And one specific area in the drug application process is as you're doing clinical trials, right, phase 3 clinical trials, where it's over 100,000 people across the globe, what regulators want to see is if there are any adverse events, those are reported within, depending on the severity, between anywhere from 5 to 7 days to 14 days, right? So they can review it and make sure that whatever drug that you're putting out there is safe. So this organization, I think it's all across, but one of the biggest things that they have to do is report these cases, right? So over 10,000 cases they get daily. Somebody has to manually look at these cases and then log them into a central system that regulators can review. So think about the amount of time that it takes to log all of these. And it can come through email, phone calls, PDFs. Somebody has to actually transcribe these things. And add on to changing goalposts, ever-changing regulations across the globe. So as you can tell, just imagine the amount of time it takes to basically log these things. And also the amount of error that could be introduced. So one of the things that client did was basically employ an intelligence solution that would automatically ingest, right, from wherever these solutions, reports will come in, and then basically have a system predict and process and qualify where these cases would go. So imagine all these case workers, which part of their work is really their primary role is really to analyze these cases, not to log them. So they spend about 80% of their time, right, processing data and 20% really doing value-added work. So one of the benefits of a solution is basically turn that upside down, which was, hey, let's leave, Karthik was saying, like the non-value-added tasks. Let's take that 80%, give it to a machine that kind of, looks at all the data, trains the data, puts all of the data into a system that can be reviewed very quickly. And then our case workers or case managers, they're actually analyzing the data and making decisions, right? Enabling the system that's given it. So I think part of that was, one, reducing the operational cost and just the manual intensive labor, mitigating the risk. So you look at this, right? This shrunk that I say cost number almost 60 to 80%, right? And then given that 80% of that time that they use to more value-added tasks. And that's where you start to create and mitigate risk of, because you're talking about patient safety here, right? So you spend more of that time making decisions around, hey, how can I make sure that these drugs that we're putting out are safe, right? So that's a very practical example, right, where you can use, I've deployed like a solution where a company have actually seen value from that right away. Now, it's evolving, right, and it's going to continue to evolve, right? Now humans are helping it make decisions, but as you train it with more data, different types of data, it can become intelligent, right, to help make those decisions. Now, what it's going to get to is, would you trust it enough to have it make decisions by themselves, right? And that's the next level of iteration that needs to happen. So,
Scott?
Okay, so I will cheat and give two examples. The first one is actually also related to drug discovery, though not in the testing and validation, but at the very early phases. Part of the research that's done at IU is looking at new molecules that might be able to interact with cancer cells or different types of proteins to inhibit their growth. And so researchers will take a new compound and say, how does this interact with a known protein structure? Well, as they look at new types of tissues that they would want to interface these molecules with, they have to know the protein structure to see how those molecules can actually interact with them. And so predicting sort of longer chain protein structures is a real computational challenge. There's a brute force method, but it takes a huge amount of computational power, and that's typically what people have done and just had to sort of use as much computational power as necessary to produce the structure. Fairly recently, Google released a model algorithm called AlphaFold 2 that showed that through AI, through a neural network inference, you can predict the protein structure with an accuracy that is as good as these computational models in a small fraction of the time. So there was this model. Many researchers at the university had heard of it and wanted to try it out on their studies to see if they could predict accurate protein structures. And what our teams were able to do was to take this model and deploy it in a research production setting to make that facility available to researchers all across the university. So basically anyone could come in and put in their amino acid strength and get a structure prediction in a very short period of time compared to what it would take to do the full computation. The other one that I'll mention is this work that we're doing with enhancing student success, and I think it's very rewarding to be able to help students advance in their career and make progression to their degree. But the point that I'd like to make in that example is that to do this, to construct this model, we're synthesizing data from our learning management system, from our student information system, from records in the admissions process. And every time that you want to deploy a new AI technology, the key is the data. And so it's not just having the proper volume of data, but all of it has to be formatted, cleaned, and in a acceptable format for the technique that you're hoping to use. And that's true whether you're building your own models or you're taking a vended solution. And so if you are thinking about something like this, you really need to look at how am I structuring my data, and how would it be amenable to a new use case in AI. And what we often see is that data structures are put in place for a particular operational purpose. to serve the need that they were designed for. And then a lot of times after the fact, someone will come along and say, I have all this data. How can I use it to gain insight? Typically, the data structures were not designed to produce that insight. And so you're actually looking for an additional value add. So there's some sort of engineering that's required to make that data valuable to the AI technique.
Thank you. Karthik?
Yeah, so I'll give 3 short examples. First, in terms of AI use on campus, almost everybody is taking their old stuff, putting AI in and trying some things out. It's kind of a fancy thing today, including startups. You know, you don't get venture funded without having some form of AI. That said, my own experience has been the place where our lab became famous was the use of visual search. We were the first to create a commercial visual search engine, much before Google and all these people. So the company got acquired more than a decade ago. So if you have, like, let's say a shoe, right? Blue color, you want it a little longer, shorter, and so on and so forth, and so on. So you have to express your ideas, which is visual. Where we worked on was part search for companies like Cummins and others. You're creating a part, you have a model, you know, everybody knows CAD, if you did, you know, created with some computer-based tools. It looks like this, but I want something a little longer, shorter, 4 holes instead of 3 holes, etc., right? But you only can search on the part using the file name. You can't search for it visually. So we actually created a visual search engine that would search for similar parts. So companies were creating a lot of duplicate bolts and nuts because different people are doing different things, and they're not going to talk to your neighbor to find out, oh, what did you do? What material did you choose? And so on and so forth. So that was our first big foray that made a big name for our lab. That was more than a decade ago. Second piece which we created was a educational robotics toolkit for teaching children AI and computer vision. So that company won the Best of Consumer Electronics show in 2016. It's in kind of semi-prototype stage. They have sold about 1,000 of them. We do a lot of workshops in the summer, including for minority outreach, both in Indy and from South Chicago. That's a way to bring the new generation up in AI and new forms of robotics. It's just a bunch of blocks that you can attach to cardboard or anything that you find around and make my shoe into a robot, for instance. So that was our second thing. More current work of our lab is entering this area because AI is data hungry. It needs a lot of data to learn, and a lot of this is done by annotators. Very expensive, takes hundreds and hundreds of days to create good annotated data that the AI can learn from. So what we are doing is for physical simulation, like in games and so on, we are learning from inside the game without using humans so that AI can become smarter quickly. That's going to be most likely our lab's next startup because they consume so much of energy, so much of people, and then something changes, you got to employ people again to change the data, and then you don't trust the data and so on. So this will change that rate at which AI and humans can work together to create better AI, hopefully. But we do it for physical operations, not for flat AI, not for flat data, but for things that humans do with stuff, where you can see it visually. We are learning that more automatically, and the humans have to come only for the later stages. Just recently, last week, we demonstrated that we could do more than 13,000 types of annotations, which would take people months to do in a matter of a few hours using NVIDIA processors, for instance. So that's our new example, which is not real, but the first two are real.
Bob, something that you've worked on that gave you personal satisfaction?
Let's see, we've got a couple examples. So the first one, local company here in Indy, they've got about 100 locations. They were looking to build a protocol for building entry. So our scanner allows them to not only build that protocol, but capture the face, get any other analytic. It then sets a touchscreen device up to answer questions You answer the questions. It sends it to an encrypted cloud, and the encrypted cloud would be either our cloud or theirs. Typically, our CIO and our team will work with them to do their cloud. It's easier. It's their information. They can manage it. But they're totally happy, and it's a situation where it's an assisted living facility, so satisfaction I get is my mom's getting older, and all of us are getting older. So to know that we put something in place that is now going to set the stage for whether you're a delivery driver, whether you're a physician, whatever, that's coming in their building, you go through a standard protocol that prints a badge. That now sets the stage for all this data to go in the cloud so they can manage who comes and goes. Very, very unique, and we enjoyed that one. The second one is a client that we've got in Omaha, Nebraska. They have over 150 vehicles, and they were having problems in the territory they run, pretty much all over Iowa and KC and Omaha. But they were going to people's houses, and they were installing these systems. But when they came back out, their truck is unloaded because all their stuff is stolen off the truck. You can have 2 or 3 of those claims a year, and insurance is going to drop you. So when they put in our artificial intelligence cameras, they noticed that they had a couple break-ins, but people would notice that as soon as the door opens, a light triggers and it comes on. Mm-hmm. So that person would shut the door and run. Mm-hmm. So not only did that help their environment relative to their equipment, it also reduced 25% their monthly expenditure with the insurance company. Right. Because the insurance company knows now you basically are taking care of me, so now I'm taking care of you. So they've sent us a couple of their other customers that are working with us now to deploy that same application because, again, you never know who's going to take what, and you can blame it on an employee or whatever, but video doesn't lie. So now they know the employees are not the ones selling and doing all this stuff. It's really people in neighborhoods that want a quick dollar, and so a good satisfaction story for us because we know that it works. It's one thing to say that, you know, this camera and this system works. It's another for a client to call you and tell you that they really enjoy working with you because we put something together that was beneficial, but also helped them to save money.
Good, good. I think that one of the things that's come to me today, our business is very people-centric. We are a consulting firm. And one of the things that I'm recognizing, everybody's talking about being so busy. They are so busy. There's so much they have to do. It seems like it's accelerating. And I know for a fact that what I will take away from this is to look more carefully at the things that are making their days busy and see if they really and truly, I have never given thought to a solution other than hiring more people. Maybe that's not the solution. Not that I'm not trying to hire more people, but is there a solution that has a better return on investment? So question, I'd like to throw it out to the audience at this point in time and see, has anything that's been stuck up to you that you'd like to ask panelists today? And if so, now the floor is open. Please do. Thank you.
What is your advice, your recommendation? A lot of you mentioned the challenges that companies have and the opportunity, and with so much data being gathered by a lot of big companies, then what can smaller or mid-sized companies do to compete and to leverage whatever their niche area is so they can kind of still grow?
I hope you know you stole my last question, but it's okay.
Excellent question.
Yeah. Please.
I don't like big companies. Sorry, I work with them. But it's a love-hate relationship with especially the real big ones that are out there. Yeah, that's a tricky question. I'll let others answer while I think about answering you better.
Well, Aubrey looks like he's got some ammunition for you.
Well, I mean, I would say, and I think I was telling Bob earlier before we started today, I think the capability for any, I mean, you have 15 to 20-year-olds now building big businesses, right, without having any kind of large infrastructure, right? All they need is a laptop, phone, internet, right? And I think there's a level playing field now where, right, the tools are out there, the technology is out there, that any business can leverage, right? If you go out to AWS or Amazon right now, you can sign up for a free cloud account where you can start a server, you can, and I'm getting a little technical, but I'm trying to illustrate the ease, right, to compete. You can start, you can spin up a machine, put an application on it, and start running something on it. And all you need is, it's a free account. All you need is an email address. You can do the same thing for Google. And there are all these resources out there for you to do that, right? So whether if you want to spin up a new database to start collecting data, and all of these capabilities are available out there. And I think it's, I talked about upskilling. I think it's just a little bit of investment and time, right? There are resources. I mean, that information overload right now it's crazy, right? So I would say not for, as a small business, I don't think of it as a barrier of entry right now because you don't have a scale, you don't have a size, you don't have the tools are out there. I think it's just helping find what works for you. And it's there, right? So to me, if we think about, what small businesses should do, right? I think, that the information is out there, the tools are out there. I think it's really understanding what impact you're trying to make and where you're trying to get to and kind of scale appropriately, right? You don't want to run too fast, you don't run too slowly, but I think being able to understand what your journey looks like, right, and what tools can help you get there, right, is what's critical, right? I think it's a level playing field right now.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think you're absolutely right. It is a level playing field. It's very easy to get into now, but I would encourage everyone not to get AI crazy or get a sense of AI FOMO that everyone's doing AI and we have to do AI, but really think strategically about what are the problems that you are having and want to address, and then look at, can AI address this? So we have people come to us that say, we have a lot of data and AI is great. How can it make my life better? And I say, well, what are your problems? And we don't have any problems. So, well, your life's fine already, so you don't need AI, right? So I think, really framing that, where are the areas where we want to see an improvement and we think AI could help, and being specific and thinking strategically about, what problem do we want to solve, and then looking and seeing, what techniques might be available to address that is really critical. And how are we going to evaluate the success of any initiative? Yeah. So, Karthik mentioned self-driving cars. How many billions of dollars have been spent on R&D for self-driving cars? Does anyone want to guess?
$1 trillion.
Yeah, it's pretty close to that. It's hundreds of billions of dollars. And I have yet to ride in one. I saw one time in the Bay Area, but I would not get in one of those things, right? So it's very easy, I think, to do a huge spend on R&D only to find that, there might have been a simpler solution or AI can't do the thing that we wanted it to do. So really, stepping back and planning first, I think, is what I would advise.
Yeah, just real quick. Another thing I would say, like you just said, I think, most organizations, small, large, they want to quickly jump into the technology, right? And I would say, usually, there's always this conversation. It's like, hey, we just spent $100 million on implementing this solution. And then some executive would ask, what did we get for it, right? So I think it's very clearly framing the context of a problem that you're trying to solve, right? The technology is the easy part, right? It's the easy part. Framing the problems and the outcomes that you're trying to get to, right? And it's not going to be the same for everybody. So I think, spending 90% of the time, right, trying to frame that problem, and then the 10%, it's the easy part, right? Executing, right, the solution. So,
yeah, I was going to echo the same thing. I was going to say that Ken hit it. That essentially you got to looking at a solution that has a better ROI for your client. That's the reason we did it. That's the reason we're going to continue to do it. And then also, another one is we try to figure out how can we work with other small MBEs, XBEs, WBEs. We've partnered with several folks in Atlanta. We have a very, very good relationship with a team in the Bay Area who I've known them for 15 years. So we are partnering together to deliver different solutions together to clients in the Bay Area and in Atlanta. I know that, being a certified MBE, we try to figure that out first. Daryl's really good with connecting all of us together. He's connected me with a really good outfit in Atlanta, and they're doing AI and some other things. So that's another important way, I think. Not only can we deliver targeted solutions, but also help others grow in the process as well.
So Karthik, you deferred to the second half?
Yeah, intentionally. So this is an excellent question, and I mirror some of the points made. But here's the thing that I learned from Don Feddersen, who actually funded my chair position, was one of the most successful venture capitalists in history. If you guys know CAD software, there's one called Pro Engineer. Anybody heard of it? Mm-hmm. No? Yeah, Pro-E. So he created that company. So Don's, he told me one thing I'll never forget. He passed away 6 years ago. The right order of doing any business thinking, the order of things is people, market, and then technology, right? So if you get the right people, you can address it, and it's and kind of somewhat agree and disagree that the playing field is level, but certainly to the level that you can learn about what AI is not. Take the Coursera course or something. It's free, right? Like, don't worry if you fail it. So just try to figure. I think learning is more important than trying to attain a good grade, right? So I kind of would also say that problems don't show up as problems. If you put a future technology in place and ask people what problem can it solve, you won't know. So you have to start with underserved needs in the marketplace that your business is proximal to. And then the technology solution, so there needs to be a problem solution fit, right? That the technology can address and create value for your customers. You got to look at that ecosystem. But that said, right, if you're a supplier, then certainly I think there is pressure from the companies themselves. I won't use some of the company names here, but let's say company X is there, right? Are they helping their suppliers? So Walmart will go and tell its supplier, you got to keep cutting down your costs and get the potatoes in place, right? If I'm the potato guy, I'm going to be scared, right? I'm going to want to figure out what to do and how is AI going to help my potato business, right? So yeah, I will think through it, and of course the smartphone is here. It's very powerful. Try to figure out if I can put sensors, cut down the labor costs, be more productive in potatoes, maybe run the drones around there and fertilize them better. So how is technology going to help me serve my supplier better, and also charge your supplier to want to help and reach out? So if company X is putting robots, are they helping the supplier in figuring out how they can be more efficient? I do know companies like Toyota have worked in the past. That regime is coming back again. So the bigger companies working with suppliers have to empower the suppliers to do better and educate them in terms of gaining access to tech. So I think this is a shared responsibility that has to come from the bigger companies. And I see Amazon doing a bunch of it. I think everybody should help suppliers down to come up the value proposition.
This is Daryl. I would like to, since Cummins is in the room and I was a part of this example which you just gave, we were a supplier to Cummins, and they do like to get those cost reductions because they're also a supplier to somebody who's pushing down cost reductions on them. And so without just telling us what to do, without telling us that we only have to do the cost reductions, they had a team come in and walk some of our processes and showed us where we could implement automation, and helped us pick out the robots we bought, and helped us tune our process to their world-class processes and was able to help us reduce our costs, which gave them a better cost. So there are examples of suppliers doing that. And in addition to that, the audience may also think about, being a small business, sometimes, in this room, there may only be solopreneurs, right? And what can I do to reduce my, touching this same thing over and over again? I don't know how much you addressed it here today, but automation and bots are becoming more popular to deploy. So if you find yourself doing the same task over and over and over again, I think about a person that unfortunately she was deployed to a different part of our business, but she really liked being at the front desk, and where she was at the front desk, most of the things she did was around invoice, basically converting work orders to invoices. And it was the same process over and over and over again, and putting it in one line after the next in an Excel spreadsheet that lasts, this spreadsheet lasts forever, right? And so within probably 2 weeks, we were able to map her process. The bot was able to see that effectively 63% of her work every day was the same repetitive work every day. With a few clicks, we automated that work, and she had that much productivity back into the system. And so I don't know if you guys got into the bots, but those are some of the lower cost, easier solutions for solopreneurs and small entrepreneurs to think about deploying.
I do want to add to your point, right? I see this mad rush into AI with a lot of students getting in, and one of the issues there is that the large companies are creating toolboxes. It happened to web page creation, for instance. Anybody can create a web page. So a lot of those students who get into these mid-tier AI kind of jobs, which are going to be automated, so that a lot of people going into AI itself are going to lose their jobs. And the large companies are creating these toolkits, and there's currently like overselling of AI in education. I'm not saying that it's not needed. Certainly, students from IU and Purdue and so on are going to figure their way out. But I don't think that it happened in the IT time frame. A lot of those mid-level jobs in IT went away. Nobody talks about it, right? They went away. The reason why nobody talked about it was it coincided with the market crash also around that time, right? So it wasn't noticed. So yeah, so AI is not a cure-all. AI should work with people and with other things in the ecosystem. It's a long journey. We are in the starting line, and certainly a lot of conversations happen. That said, in the short run, people over-expect AI to do things, and it doesn't deliver. Okay? In the long run, it's when it's going to come back and haunt us. It's the same thing that happened with the internet. I mean, it started way time ago. It's only now that the productivity benefits of the internet are being gained, right? The same thing is going to probably be true with a lot of AI, but there are some narrow kinds of AI which are certainly going to affect certain kinds of skills which are routine.
So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to draw us to a close of this session. It is now 11:58. I know Carolyn would have a hard stop at noon for lunch. And so I want to thank Dow for bringing us together and working with the team. I'd like, if you would please, take a moment to thank our panelists, Dr. Scott Michael, Dr. Karthik Ramani, Bob Logan, and Aubrey Annan. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, all. In an effort to get you in the front of the lunch line, we are adjourned. Thank you.